Hi BookTube. I'm here today finally with a video that I probably haven't made in over a year. A wrap-up video. I'm really bad at doing wrap-ups. I'm stellar at doing TBRs. It's very easy to choose like what you want to read. It's a lot harder to then talk about what you have read. So let's do the hard thing. There's no particular order. I just made a list and I'm going to talk about the books. So, System Collapse by Martha Wells. It's the most recent Murderbot novel. We're probably due for another one this year. So, I've made it 7 books into the series, so I think we can all safely conclude that I like these books. I'm into this series and I'm enjoying it, so why would you read 7 books in a series that you're not enjoying? I know some people do that. I don't know how people force themselves to read books that they don't like. As I just finished reading a book I didn't like for Canada Reads. But it's not 7 books. That was 1 book, so I don't know why you read 7 books. Anyways, yeah, I feel like I've talked about Murderbot a lot. Murderbots hacked their governor module. They're like a I can't remember the word that they use. They're almost like a cyborg. They got human parts mixed with robotic parts, and they are set up as security, but they have this thing called a governor module that monitors their behavior and puts limits on them. But Murderbot has hacked their governor module and has free will now. Yeah, so aside from the characters, the snark, the relatable social anxiety, and my favorite part, which is seeing Murderbot in action, what I really enjoy about these novels, oddly enough, is I know that Martha Wells is a fellow Stargate fan. She's written actual books for the Stargate Atlantis, published books. Yeah, and I see the influences Stargate has on the Murderbot novels, and it always just makes me smile to see those. I kind of maybe picture Murderbot now as John from Stargate Atlantis. Yeah, so there's a lot more talking and diplomacy in this book than action, which I get. It's I can see the progression, the character progression in Murderbot. But I love those action scenes. I love seeing Murderbot in action, dealing with both security things, tech things hacking into different cameras or hacking different bots, and then also fighting at the same time. That's what I love about the Murderbot novels the most, and I hope we get more of that in the next book. Okay, The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. I also read that one. This is about a young boy who was sent to a reform school and the horrible things that happened at that school. So the book's about systemic racism, the civil rights movement, the penal system, that kind of stuff. So we follow Elwood, a young boy who gets caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he gets sent to this school. You can hopefully, if you know enough about history, kind of clue into what happened there. I don't want to tell you because of spoilers, I guess. And I do overall appreciate the message the book was trying to convey, the awfulness of these reform schools. I think it felt a little too detached to be really effective. Because I know it's a tough topic to write about, and I can kind of see why certain things were done the way they were, but if you want a book like that to make an impact, I think you have to hit an emotional chord too, and I just felt that was really lacking in the book. Because I've read other books that dealt with similar topics, that not only informed you about things, but also struck that emotional chord. I think of Indian Horse by Richard Wagamese, which was about residential schools in Canada, where First Nations children were literally stolen from their homes and put into these schools, and in some cases experimented on. A lot of essay and all that kind of stuff happened as well in those schools. and beatings and stuff. So it's very similar to what happened in the schools that Colson Whitehead is writing about. So I think just like the things that were wrong about were like the third person perspective, maybe. He did a lot of showing and not telling about, or he did a lot of telling, not showing. Got those around of different things that happened. And he kind of like glanced over things. A lot of characters faded to black while they were experiencing something bad. Yeah. So that's just, I had a few issues with the book. I do appreciate what it was trying to do. I also read A Girl Called Eel by Ali Zamar, and this is my absolute favorite book of the month. Just, I loved the way it was told. So, like, how to explain this? Imagine you meet someone and they want to trauma dump on you, but they also have ADHD. That's what this book was like. It's someone you're meeting for the first time who's just like, oh, someone I can tell my story to. And they keep going off on different tangents and stuff like that. So this is the story of Eel. She's a young girl. I think she's like 16 or 17. I say young girl because I'm old. Who is floating at sea, and she's telling you her life story. How her father, All-Knowing, that's his name. His name's All-Knowing. Raised her, about her first love, whose name was Voracious. I just love the names in the book too, that's what I'm telling you. And then how she ended up floating in the sea. The writing is what makes this book so good, as I talked about. It ignores grammar completely. Like, the book is all one sentence long, and the way it does that is really well done, in my opinion. And it also kind of like does away with conventional storytelling as well. So the tangents that she ends up going on to adds to the charm and to the overall story as well. I can't tell you that part because spoilers, but yeah, she does. It does make sense why these tangents are happening. And I think this chaos that you're immersed into really lends to like the characterization of Eel, because she's not necessarily like this likable character, but she's charming. Although, like, perhaps her dire situation, which permeates the whole story, makes the reader, a bit more forgiving for her, like, her teenage arrogance. Because I remember being a teenager, too, and, thinking I had all the answers to everything. So definitely I'm glad that I read this book, and that there's, like, this great start to the year. I always find that when I get that really good book in January, at the beginning of the year, it makes the rest of the reading year better. And that didn't happen last year. Maybe that's why, like, last year I didn't have that one book that I really loved in January. So I'm glad that happened this year. I also read A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin, and I have a big part of my soul and my heart belongs to Ursula K. Le Guin and her writing. I absolutely love this. So this was a reread for me, but I knew I'd read the whole series before, but I couldn't remember a lot of it. So it was like reading a book that was semi-familiar but still had a lot of new things in it for me. So this book is about Ged. He releases this shadowy being into the world and needs to fix this problem that haunts him before it becomes too big. Again, I'm just awed at Le Guin's storytelling. Like, she manages to do, and it's just like a 200-page novel. It's this thin little paperback. And, like, she does in 200 pages what takes some authors, like, 600 pages to do. And I know some books have to be 600 pages, but, like, she's just so able to, like, get her point across so succinctly in books that I really like it. So what got me most in this book, reading it as an adult especially, was how much I saw the shadow as like this metaphor for depression and mental health struggles. I don't know if I got that reading it when I was younger, and that just made the whole experience and the journey that Jed goes on, especially like the ending, so much more poignant looking at it that way. So like, find a lot of Le Guin's like science fiction writing is about like large societal problems. The Left Hand of Darkness is about like gender and sexuality, and The Dispossessed is one of my favorite books, is about like capitalism versus communism, like anarchism and like that kind of stuff. But her fantasy deals with like more like personal problems. At least that's in my experience what I find. So yeah, I definitely like recommend everyone reads Oser to Earthsea to like understand like a mental health struggle. I also listened to a book, it's been a while since I did that, and that was A Swim in the Pond in the Rain by George Sanders. So in this process, Sanders is writing as the writing professor that he actually is, and he breaks down 7 Russian short stories and explains what makes them good stories. What's really cool is that the stories were read in the audiobook, and they were narrated by like different celebrities, which I thought was kind of cool. So like Nick Offerman, Glenn Close, B.D. Wong, like read different stories, so I thought that was really cool. And then he would come on as the audiobook narrator and talk about what made those stories so good. And he says in the beginning that he's writing this book for people who are interested in writing short stories, but I think it's also good for people who read as a way to like analyze and look differently at literature and understand what we're reading and why like certain things are told the way they are. So I didn't really personally need a lot of convincing that like Russian literature is great. I love Russian classics. So I'm probably a bit biased, but I really actually enjoyed this book. And then I read some comics. I read Berserk Volume 2, and I'm halfway through Volume 3 as we speak. The deluxe editions, I wonder if I have. Let me just grab it to show you, because it's not just like a normal manga. This is what the volumes look like. They are massive. Let me show you. It's okay to show you this page. So they're massive volumes. And they contain quite a bit of the actual stories. So like they're huge. So Volume 2 and a half of Volume 3. Berserk is the story of Guts, who's been a mercenary since birth, and the first volume is like half of the first volume is weird, but when he meets Griffith, the story starts to change, and it's more about his relationship with Griffith, as Griffith is also rising to power. So we get like this mix of lots of violence because he's a mercenary and there's wars being fought, and that violence is Guts' like coping mechanism for when he feels like any strong emotions. And it's also about like those emotional scenes where he's like reluctantly forming bonds with those around him because he was hurt a lot as a child growing up. So that's Berserk so far. I also read Batman No Man's Land. So I laugh because if not, I'm going to cry. I am Canadian, so I am watching at a distance, and I'm very grateful at this point to be Canadian to look at what's going on in the States. But very, very happy I'm not an American citizen right now. Basically, Gotham becomes what will happen to the U.S. if the current administration continues on its path. It's basically the best way to sum up this novel. Pandemics, earthquakes, the release of dangerous prisoners, isolation from the rest of the world has happened to Gotham. The story actually doesn't feature a lot of Batman himself. It's mostly a story of like the different gangs and like individual people and their experiences, and like other heroes who have stepped up because Batman did vanish for a while. So it was interesting like to see the world building through different like characters that we don't normally see. The character of Commissioner Gordon felt a little off to me though. Things that he did in the story, I was like, I don't know. From my other understandings of Gordon, I didn't see him actually doing those things, but the commentary that was able to develop because of that story about the role of police without having checks and balances was interesting, though. So I think it's more of a Gotham story as opposed to a Batman story. But is Batman Gotham? I don't know. I also read Dinosaur Sanctuary Volumes 3 and 4. This is just plain awesome, nerdy, fun. I love these comics. So it's like, what if Jurassic Park was actually a success and dinosaur parks just became as common as zoos? That's the premise, and we're following the different I don't think they're paleontologists per se. They're like zookeepers for the dinosaurs. He does have a paleontologist write in between each like chapter about the dinosaurs that we just saw that he talked about. So the paleontologist talks about things like the way the bones are structured in certain dinosaurs, and how that would affect them, like sitting down or lying down, or like the shape of their face and how that would, like, make them seem to be smiling from certain angles and stuff like that. Just like providing the science behind providing the science behind the comic. And I loved the nerding out that happened in it. I also was reading poems from a book of luminous things. I read most of the nature section. It's divided into different topics, so the first topic was about nature. I tried to post every day my reading a poem a day and like quick analysis of it, but it was a pain to be honest to have to dig out the webcam or the camera every time and find something to set it up on. And then there were sometimes where I didn't have anything to say about the poems, and to me the goal behind this was just to at least read the poem, not necessarily analyze it. The analyzing part to me was just fun. It's weird to say that, but yeah. And sometimes I just, I didn't have enough energy to really care, or the poem I didn't really connect with it, I didn't find anything interesting in it, or the poem was just like, their haikus are just 3 lines and there's not much. I don't know enough about haikus to like analyze them and find the symbology and stuff like that. So yeah, I appreciated the variety of authors that he had, but going forward, I don't think I'm just going to do it page by page, like chronologically the way he has it written. I'm just gonna like flip around and find out, because everyday reading about like a nature poem was just kind of getting boring, and I don't want this project to be boring. I want it to keep me more engaged. But yeah, I'm going to keep reading that book. I think that might just be the book I stick with this year. I think there's like 400 poems or so in there, so it will take me just over a year to get through it. So that is all I read this year. Yeah, so far. All I read in January. That's System Collapse, The Nickel Boys, A Girl Called Eel, A Wizard of Earthsea, A Swim in the Pond in the Rain, Berserk's Volume 2, and half of Volume 3. I won't count that, though. Batman's No Man's Land's Dinosaur Sanctuary Volume 3 and 4, and some poems. So I actually I finished 9 things, which I think is good. I'm accomplishing what I wanted to accomplish, fitting in my goals there. Let me know what you read in January, and thank you for watching.